This is the Gerry Callahan Show.
Well, Kamala has made her choice. She has selected her running mate. Oh, I should say Barack Obama and Eric Holder and Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries have made their choice. Socialist Minnesota Governor Mike Waltz, 60-year-old former teacher, former National Guardsman. We'll go over his record in full. It is just what you would expect. No different than Kamala Harris's record. Just a radical extremist left-wing nut job. But we got to start with the uncomfortable reason. The number one reason he was chosen over Josh Shapiro. Mike Waltz is not a Jew. That's the key here. That's the deciding factor. Kamala Harris refused to choose Josh Shapiro, which made much more sense. He's from a much more important state. He's younger. He's smarter. He's more articulate. He's less radical. But you can't have a Jew on the ticket in 2024. Not if you're a Democrat. No, that would upset the Hamas wing of your party. That would set off the crowds, the mobs in Chicago in a couple of weeks when they convene for their convention. Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley would not have been happy if she picked a guy who was born and raised Jewish. Wasn't his choice. He was born Jewish, but we can't have Jews on the ticket. Not today. 20 years ago, Joe Lieberman was selected as the VP candidate, and nobody gave it a thought. It was, the first Jewish guy on the ticket. Wasn't a big deal. Democrats didn't revolt, but times have changed. They are now the pro-Hamas, pro-Antifa, anti-Semitic party. So if you are Jewish, just know you're not welcome here. Josh Shapiro was not welcome here. She's going to make the announcement in Pennsylvania today. Will Shapiro show up? Because he certainly seems like he's been a good little toady for Kamala so far. He was willing to sell out Israel in the war if they chose him. So far, he has not called for a ceasefire. He would have if she chose him, but she decided against it. Winning Pennsylvania, I thought, was the most important thing for Kamala, and Josh Shapiro could have done that, could have delivered Pennsylvania, but no, can't have a Jewish guy on the ticket. So now you have this guy, this absolutely pathetic left-wing socialist squish, who's known for one thing above all others. He enabled the George Floyd riots in 2021. He was the governor. He did not call out the National Guard, even though he's a former guardsman. He let it happen. He encouraged it. So here is your ticket, Democrats. The top of the ticket is Kamala Harris, who said, quote, the rioters will not stop and they should not stop. They were burning the city to the ground. They were killing people. They were assaulting cops. It was absolute carnage, absolute chaos. And the potential VP said they will not stop and they should not stop burning city blocks, destroying the city, and they shouldn't stop. And then she supported a bail fund to bail out the rioters, the criminals, the vandals, the people who were attacking cops. This guy allowed the police station, and we certainly talked a lot about this, the 3rd precinct, the police station was burnt to the ground as cops ran for their lives. He allowed it. He told them to abandon the police station. That's the guy who is now running for vice president. That's the guy who is one heartbeat away from the presidency if Kamala can't make it. Yes, that's who she chose. Someone just as radical, just as extreme as she is. And we'll go through the whole record. There is nothing moderate, nothing middle of the road about this country bumpkin. Get ready, though. The media is going to tell you he's just an old school country liberal. Yes, former teacher, former football coach, just a folksy guy, funny, personable, likable, unless, of course, you're a store owner in Minneapolis, or a cop in Minneapolis, or a confused kid who's not sure about who's confused about his gender, then he wants you to go all in. He's all in on the trans madness. That's just one of so many extreme views. I want to get to this though, because I've watched a lot of the coverage this morning, and they're already slobbering over him on CNN because he's the guy who decided to label JD Vance weird. Yes, I watched this morning as John King and John Berman and all the Democrat operatives with press passes on CNN were praising this pick. And John King said everyone was impressed with his labeling of JD Vance as weird. So he decided to make up this description of Vance as weird. Don't really explain why Vance isn't weird. Not weird at all. He's the least weird guy in DC. But it spread, and all his surrogates in the media repeated it on NBC and MSNBC. They all said JD Vance is weird. That was his idea. And that's one of the reasons she chose him, because he lied about Vance being weird. Well, this guy signed a bill forcing schools from the 4th grade to the 12th grade to put tampons in the boys' room. Yes, tampons, feminine hygiene products in the boys' rooms in 4th grade. That guy wants you to think JD Vance is weird. Yeah, good luck with that. I understand. They have the support of the media. I understand. They will all parrot his talking points. They will all tell you what a great choice this is. It's not. It's a terrible choice for Harris. He brings nothing to the ticket. She was probably going to win Minnesota anyway. And now she's probably going to lose Pennsylvania. But it doesn't matter. The important thing is the Rashida Tlaib's and Ilhan Omar's will be happy. Nancy Pelosi is happy with this pick. Bernie Sanders supported this. He endorsed this man for VP. Bernie Sanders, the socialist. You know why? Because he's also a socialist, and he admitted as much in on camera. This is Mike Waltz telling you that there's really nothing wrong with being a socialist. It's just like being a good neighbor. Listen to this.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
One person, so being a socialist. How did we get to this point? We have two socialists on a major party ticket running for president in 90 days. Two socialists, two extremists, the two most far left, most progressive, most liberal, most radical, most extreme candidates in American history are on the ticket. And right now they're tied or close with Donald Trump. It's mind-boggling. It's baffling how anybody could vote for this. And we've certainly gone over the big issues. He's an open border leftist, certainly pro-crime. Crime has skyrocketed in Minnesota under his governorship because he encourages it. He supports it. But there's one thing I haven't heard this morning, and we probably won't hear. And we've certainly heard a lot about the riots. He supported the rioters, encouraged them, made excuses for them. I'm not sure how anybody in Minneapolis could support a guy that was cheering on the destruction of their city. But we talked about the documentary Fall of Minneapolis, and I strongly encourage you to go see it. It's fallofminneapolis.com, I believe. Just Google it, watch it. It's free. It's eye-opening. It's shocking. He knew it was based on a lie. He knew George Floyd wasn't murdered. He knew George Floyd overdosed. He knew the autopsy was changed. And yet he ran with it anyway, just like all the Democrats, just like the mayor, Jacob Fry. They all played along with it, with the mob, with the lie about George Floyd. And they all stood there and cheered as their city burned. That's what this clown did. He had no problem with criminals burning buildings, burning a police station, hurting cops, assaulting cops. No problem. because of equity. Can you get that clip of him explaining why the George Floyd riots happened and essentially rationalizing it? It was all about equity. And he actually says it was exciting. Exciting. You remember what that was like 4 years ago when riots, hundreds and hundreds of riots took place around the country and innocent people were hurt and buildings were burned and businesses were destroyed? He thought it was exciting. Listen to this man.
A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at. This is a moment of inflection. It's a moment of real change. It's a moment that those folks who are out there demanding this are not going to take a commission or a report. They're going to want fundamental change. And that is what I think that's one of the exciting things in the midst of all this. You can feel a sense of optimism coming back.
One of the exciting things, this was during the riots. He thought it was one of the exciting things that optimism. I mean, I could think of a lot of ways to describe those riots, that anarchy. I wouldn't call it exciting, and I certainly wouldn't call it optimism. That's just one. That's the thing that the Trump campaign, Trump fans have to hammer home every day. I assume they have ads ready to go with video of the fires, the destruction, the cops running for their lives. That's going to be the message going forward, that those riots, no one in the country was more responsible for enabling them, excusing them, allowing them than this guy. But that's only part of it. As I said with Kamala Harris, as I've been saying for weeks now, show me, tell me, point out one thing, one view, one position, one opinion she has that is not way outside the mainstream, that is not antithetical to the views of the average American. As we're watching right now, the results of the George Floyd riots, the destruction in the biggest city in his state, and he still hasn't condemned them. No, he still supports them. It's just insane that this guy is even in elected office, let alone running for the second highest office in the country. But tell me one view that this lunatic has that is not way outside the mainstream. Are you ready? He changed, just some of it is just so nuts. He changed the Minnesota flag, the state flag, to resemble the Somalian flag. This is on the encouragement of Ilhan Omar, of course. It now resembles the Somali flag, the Minnesota flag. He was a huge lockdown guy, a mask guy. He imposed mask mandates and lockdowns and put people in prison if they violated the lockdowns. We're going to get to one of the stories of a business owner who did 90 days in solitary confinement for attempting to open up her business, who saved her livelihood. And this tyrant put her in jail. So she did more time than just about any of the people responsible for the carnage and the rioting. A woman who just wanted to open up her business. He shut down schools, churches, and businesses. He oversaw the largest COVID fraud scheme in the country, with more than 250 million stolen in COVID funds. He signed the most radical gender transition trans bill in the country and was adamant that Minnesota would be a sanctuary for people who wanted to sterilize and mutilate children in the name of trans ideology. By the way, he has he was busted for DUI once. I'm not sure we're going to hear a lot about that. He signed the most radical abortion bill in the country, where there is zero restrictions, none. Due date abortion. You can look it up. You can have an abortion for any reason at any time in Minnesota. Now, I guess that works in Minnesota. Is that going to work in the Rust Belt, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania? Is that going to work in Georgia and Arizona? We will find out. But there is nothing, zero, that he believes in that is not far left, that is not extreme. So he is in lockstep with Kamala Harris. And I think this is a great choice if you're Donald Trump, if you're J.D. Vance. They were afraid, I understand why, of Josh Shapiro. Shapiro could and would probably deliver Pennsylvania. Minnesota, that was a long shot anyway. A Republican hasn't won Minnesota since 1972. It wasn't, I believe, 72. It wasn't going to happen. I mean, it was close, the polls, but he can deliver Minnesota. Good, great. So what? Pennsylvania is back in the Trump camp because of this choice, because whoever was making the choice, I'm sure it wasn't Kamala, she's not smart enough, but whoever made the choice decided to placate the far left, decided to placate the Hamas wing and make sure that there would be no equivocation here. They are pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, pro-ceasefire. They are afraid of what's going to happen in Chicago in a few weeks when all the crazies come out. And I got news for you. They're still going to come out. The war is still going on in Israel. They don't care. You're going to see this confluence of pro-Hamas, climate crazies, BLMs. They're all going to show up in Chicago in a few weeks, and it's going to be ugly. And I'm really not sure what this guy does for you. I understand he's a white guy. I love it how the Party of Diversity chooses a white guy. Hell, all the finalists were white guys. I'm not sure why they just excluded all the people of color and all the women and all the LGBTQ candidates, but they did. They chose a white guy, and they think he's going to be folksy. He's going to be humorous, and he's going to tell stories, and he's just going to seem like a regular guy. Well, regular guys don't put tampons in the boys' room for fourth graders. Regular guys don't support the riots that rip this country apart. This guy he looks like just some old guy. He's 60 years old, former football coach. I'm sure they'll emphasize that. Teacher, National Guardsman. I don't care. All his views, just like hers, all his views way, way outside the mainstream. I'll just give you this quick story before we move on. This is from The Blaze. This is from 2021. As thousands of BLM rioters burned down half of Minneapolis, as they remained out of jail and a record number of criminals remained on the streets, a business owner was put in solitary confinement for 90 days for the crime of having her restaurant open during the illegal lockdowns. Despite 400 studies showing the interventions never worked to stop the spread of the virus, Freeborn County Judge Joseph Bultell sentenced Lisa Hanson to 90 days in jail for keeping her now defunct Interchange Wine and Coffee Bistro open. So she kept her wine and coffee shop open to try to make a living. And they put her in jail for 90 days while the criminals, while the vandals, while the rioters and arsonists ran wild. I'm sorry. This has to be an ad. Put her face. She has to be out front. This is what we're talking about. The worst of the worst, the worst of the COVID governors, the worst of the lockdown lunatics is now on the national ticket. Haven't we learned anything? They were wrong. They were wrong about everything. And yet they're going to double down and put him. He's now on the ticket. He's now in 90 days. You'll be able to choose whether you want him as vice president of the United States. This is crazy what we're living through right now. Two absolute radical lunatics on the ticket, like we've never seen before. I sound like Trump now. As radical, more radical than anyone we've ever seen before. And they want you to vote for 4 more years of what we've just lived through for the last 3.5 years. Totally, completely insane. But all right, we got lots to get to. We got to get to, Kamala. We are now 17 days since the coup, where she removed Joe Biden, forced him off the ticket, forced him out. and she hasn't spoken to anybody. She has to do that today when she announces this pick, but she's not going to take questions. And if she does, there'll be plants, there'll be supporters, there'll be CNN or MSNBC people. She'll be laughing and cackling and talking about what a wonderful guy this is. She won't have to answer why, how she ended up as the nominee despite getting 0 votes and winning 0 primaries. It's such an insane time in America. Now the candidate who is tied in the polls, who has a real chance to be president, was supported by nobody. And yet she doesn't have to answer, explain, nothing. No press conference, no interview, nothing. And that's what we're going to see for the next 90 days. Hide her and hope that Trump stumbles and enough people just don't like Trump, so they will pick her and him. Just crazy, crazy time in America. All right, we got to get to Kamala. Oh, big news from the Biden administration yesterday as the economy crashed, as war one step closer to war in the Middle East. There was a big announcement for the Biden administration, and congratulations to Harrison Butker. We got to get to that. He's now the highest paid kicker in the NFL. And those woke critics on ESPN and other places, they just can't stand it. We'll get to that more, but first.
Excuse me.
Be 1 second. Good to go.
Oh, the stock market has not come back yet. I don't know it will. We may be heading to recession. And there are people who think, who could fix all this? Kamala Harris could fix all this. It's just absurd. It's the whole idea that this vapid, stupid person even understands the first thing about inflation. Hell, she caused inflation. She was the deciding vote in the American Rescue Act, which pissed away $2 trillion, just printed and pumped more money in the economy, leading to inflation. We all know that. She doesn't know that. She's not smart enough. But we got to revisit this clip because it's important. This person cannot be handed the levers of power. She cannot. She's just not smart enough. She can't do it. We can't allow it. Let's listen as someone asks Kamala Harris. By the way, she was in Europe. The whole world saw this. Someone asked Kamala Harris, about inflation, which is something you would think someone who was in the Senate, an attorney general, someone who was serving as vice president might have some rudimentary grasp of what goes into inflation, what causes it, what you can possibly do about it. She has no idea. She could not pass Econ 101 at Appalachian State today. She couldn't. She's incapable. Listen to this.
And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources.
We can't do this. We can't have her anywhere near the Oval Office. And the idea, there's a reason she failed in 2019. There's a reason she had no support. She was polling at 1% to 2%. There's a reason she withdrew before the first primary. There's a reason she was historically She was viewed as the worst vice president ever. Her approval rating was the lowest ever. It was lower than Joe Biden's. And in a month, that all changed. I like to somehow, some people say that the media's doesn't have the influence they once did, and they're not as important as they once were. And that's true, but they still have influence. They have created this candidate. The media has created this. How else do you explain a person going from the lowest approval rating ever, someone that many people in her own party, they wanted her to withdraw, to pull out of the, to remove herself from the ticket because she was a drag on Joe Biden. Now she's at the top of the ticket, and the media is calling her a cultural phenomenon and praising her energy. I don't care how much energy she has. She is not fit for the office. She is a media creation. She's not a real candidate. She's not a real person. She's just this empty pantsuit with no substance, no brains, no ability to grasp the issues. And they want her to hold the highest office in the land, to be the leader of the free world. There's something really wrong, really dark going on here. Even her supporters know she doesn't belong in this position. They know she could never win election on her own, that she was rejected for a reason. People listened, they watched, and they knew she couldn't do the job. She was chosen, as we all know, for her immutable characteristics. She's a woman of color. Joe Biden said he was going to pick a woman. He did. He didn't pick the best one, but he picked a woman. He kept his promise. And now they're only supporting her because she's not Trump. That's it. She's the alternative. They got stuck with her, and now they're lying to the world, telling you she can do the job. By the way, there's just so much. There's so many receipts. There's so much video. Do we have her telling you she is woke and we all must be woke? I think we've come to understand what woke is. Woke is destructive. Woke is un-American. Just like DEI and affirmative action are un-American. Judging people based on their immutable characteristics is un-American. And we're moving in the right direction. People are dumping their DEI programs and dropping affirmative action and basing things once again on merit, which is the way it should be. But not her. She wants you to know we should be more woke. Listen to this.
We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
She's laughing, and the two women she's on the panel with on this show, on this podcast, are just looking at her like, what are you laughing about? What are you talking about? We have to stay woke? Why? Why do we have to stay woke? It is discouraging. Every day that goes by, I mean, we are about to see a regional war in the Middle East any minute now. She was in the Situation Room with Biden. She left early yesterday. The meeting was still going on in the White House, in the Situation Room, and she took off in her motorcade, I guess maybe to take care of the VP thing. But she's involved, and she wants to be in the big chair. She wants to be commander-in-chief. This woke woman with no clue about any issue, no grasp of any issue. It is frightening right now. We got any more from woke Kamala?
And as a woman, there's a balance to be struck between being tough and being a bitch. Turn that off.
Look at that. It is, you know what? The only place who ever elected her to anything is California. California doesn't count. It's not a real state anymore. I mean, they elect Adam Schiff. They elected Dianne Feinstein when she was almost dead. She had dementia. They elect Nancy Pelosi. California is not a real place. It's la la land. It's not real. That's the only place that would ever elect a person like this, an unserious, unserious, empty, soulless, vapid, vacuous person. And again, if you wanted her in the cabinet, if you wanted her in some bureaucracy just because of, she checks some boxes, fine, do that. You can't tell me she can be commander in chief. That is just too scary, too frightening. I can't believe any serious person can do it. And again, ask your friends, ask your liberal friends. Make the case for Kamala without mentioning Donald Trump. Go ahead. Make the case for Kamala and Walz without mentioning Trump. They can't do it. The only thing she has going for her, the only thing, well, I guess there's two things. She doesn't have dementia, I don't think, and she's not Trump. That's the only case they can make. That's the only reason they fawn over her every night on MSNBC and CNN. That's the only reason the New York Times and Washington Post are gaslighting the country, telling you she can do the job, telling you she's fit for the job, telling you that the next 4 years would not be a disaster under her leadership. They know it's a lie, and they will lie to you for the next 3 months. That's what they do. That's their job. But they know just as well as we know that she can't do it, that she's incapable, that she's unfit. But here we go. Oh, I'm sorry. They're taking care of the serious business of the American people. Yes, they were. Yes, they are. I got to admit, I laughed out loud at this yesterday. I was waiting for the war to begin. I was watching the stock market. The NASDAQ plummeted 1,000 points for the first time ever. The NASDAQ dropped 1,000 points. We lost $2 trillion in a matter of hours. And what comes over the wire? Oh, look at this. Major legislation from the Biden administration. This is from Fox News. The Biden administration announced a plan to target plastic pollution, dedicating particular focus to phase out single-use plastics, such as kitchen cutlery, cups, and straws across federal departments. President Biden announced the order taking aim at the climate crisis, which would require an all-hands-on-deck response. They're outlawing banning plastic spoons and forks and sporks. They're banning them across all federal bureaus. No more plastic forks to combat the climate crisis, which, let's remind you, he says is the only existential threat to America, is the made-up climate crisis. Not war, not nukes, not the southern border, not inflation or the stock market crashing. The only threat, existential threat, is the climate crisis. God, we're going to have to listen to that too for the next 3 months, talking about how Trump doesn't care about the climate crisis. And the only candidate who will do something about the climate crisis, Jane Fonda, endorsed Kamala Harris yesterday because of climate change. It's just, I know I won't live long enough, but I wish I could see the day when we just put this nonsense behind us and move on. We got to listen to this absolute garbage about the climate crisis and somehow not allowing federal employees to use sporks is supposed to change the weather and make it cooler. We're going to change the weather if you just stop using your spork at lunch in the break room. That's the important work the Biden administration is doing as we prepare for war and as the stock market crashes. All right, we got to get to my favorite sports story of the day. The great Harrison Buckner gets a new contract, and some people just aren't happy about it because, Harrison Buckner loves his wife and kids because Harrison Buckner is a Catholic, and they can't stand that.
Excuse me.
I'm looking forward to more Mike Waltz stuff because he's just like Kamala. He's got a long record, a lot of receipts. He said a lot of things, and he's going to be running from that soon. And they're gonna do their best to memory hole the real crazy radical stuff when he promises sex changes for little kids and tampons in the boys' room and all. And he's promising, by the way, to make Minnesota carbon neutral or whatever by 2040, which is nonsense, which you can't do, which no one should do. Doesn't matter. He's all in. I'm still looking for something that's not crazy, radical, left-wing orthodoxy, something that makes him seem that they can latch onto and tell us he's a moderate. I mean, there's nothing. He's just like her. There's nothing.
And he looks like everything they hate, which is funny too.
That's true. I mean, that's true. They pick the old white bald guy, heterosexual bald guy, former football coach and National Guardsman. Normally they would hate that, but this is a football coach who wants to make sure there are tampons in the football locker room in case any of the transgender players are menstruating. And JD Vance is weird. This guy. This is the guy who decided JD Vance was weird. And then all his friends in the media echoed it. And they decided that worked so well, they would reward him by making him vice president. It wasn't just Josh Shapiro, by the way. It was Mark Kelly in Arizona, former astronaut in another key swing state. I mean, there were other Gretchen Whitmer in another key swing state. They chose a guy from a state that they were going to win anyway. Because why? Because I don't know what it gets you. I mean, they think they will fool Midwesterners, moderate, independent Midwesterners who fool you to think that he's just a old school, moderate Democrat. He's not. He's just the opposite. There is nothing in his background, nothing on his record. I've gone over the whole damn thing. There is nothing. You will find nothing that is not extreme left-wing Bernie bro stuff. I mean, he's no different from Ilhan Omar. Again, he changed the state flag to look like Somalia. How extreme do you have to be to do that? They got rid of the state flag and rolled out a new one that looks like the Somalia flag. That's how crazy, nutty, left-wing this man is. And and I think Republicans, the Trump campaign are thrilled. They were afraid of Shapiro. They were a little nervous about Kelly. They are thrilled with this guy. And maybe he'll hold his own in a debate with Vance. God knows, the media will help. And maybe they'll just focus on abortion. But even that, who's the extremist? He believes in abortion up to the date of birth for any reason. You can go in there in the 9th month and say, I wanted a girl, I got a boy. I want an abortion. And he is on board. He believes in that. He supports that. So even that issue, abortion, and you're going to sit there and talk about threats to democracy with Trump? There it is. There's a new flag and the Somalia flag. Yes, he caved to the radical Islamic lobby, and there's a lot of that in his state, and changed the flag. Again, not a huge issue, but I'm just looking for something that they can spin and make him look like a moderate, make him look like a threat, a guy who is not way outside the mainstream. And there is nothing. Speaking of the mainstream, my man Harrison Buckner, congratulations. Kansas City Chiefs kicker agreed Monday to a 4-year, $25.6 million contract extension that includes $17 million guaranteed. That vaults Buckner past Ravens Justin Tucker and Eagles Jake Elliott and makes him the highest paid kicker in NFL history. Now, he deserves it. He's a great kicker. They need him. They love him. But you know what? I like this even more because they tried to cancel him. They tried to ruin him. And they failed. His team stuck by him. The Chiefs stuck by him. Hell, his teammates, Kelsey and Mahomes, they stuck by him. They said they don't agree with everything he says. He's a devout Catholic who loves his wife and children, and that pisses off a lot of people on ESPN. This is a former ESPN guy, Trey Wingo. Can you pop that up for me? Trey Wingo, I don't even know what he does now. He does a podcast or whatever. I kind of liked him but he's an old white guy, and we know ESPN got rid of most of the old white guys because they're woke. He writes, the Harrison Buckner extension, making the highest paid kicker, underscores the inherent truth of the NFL. The better you are at the job, the more a team is willing to put up with, pure and simple. Put up with. So the Chiefs are putting up with Harrison Buckner, who, again,
The Chiefs who employed Tyreek Hill for a very long time.
good point. The Chiefs who employed Tyreek Hill and Britt Reed, the coach, son of Andy Reid, who almost killed a kid, I think, severely injured someone driving drunk, a young kid, after he was drinking at the stadium. That team, yeah, they're going to put up with a devout Catholic who loves his wife and kids and believes in his religion. They put up with that, right? A team that put up with Tyreek Hill. I mean, Tyreek Hill just signed a huge extension in Miami. Did Trey Wingo said, boy, that shows what they're willing to put up with? No, that's a guy that, likes to beat up women. That's no big deal. But a guy who loves his wife and kids and believes in his religion, they're going to put up with? It is amazing. They wanted him fired. They wanted him canceled. All the crazies, the Keith Oldmans out there, they just hate him. And he just doubles down. He has not backed down 1 inch. He's not given in. He's not apologized, and he never will. And I, for one, will be rooting hard for Harrison Buckner, the highest paid kicker in NFL history. Congratulations to Buckner. One more thing. I love this story too. I didn't even send it to Ironhead, but a judge ruled yesterday. This one also made me laugh out loud. A judge ruled that the federal government must give Jacob Chansley his horns back. Yes, the QAnon shaman, the Buffalo Head guy, the Viking guy who was part of the insurrection, who walked peacefully through the Capitol for a few minutes, who hurt nobody, who broke nothing, and did 10 months in solitary confinement and ended up, he was sentenced to 4 years or 41 months. I believe he did a couple of years, including 10 months in solitary for walking peacefully through the Capitol. They seized, confiscated his horns and his hat, whatever that thing, his helmet with the horns, and the judge ordered them, they have to give it back, which is great. He should wear that again proudly because he got railroaded. He did more time than any of the people who burned down Minneapolis. By the way, the kid who was convicted of burning the police station to the ground and almost killing cops, forcing cops to run for their lives after Mike Walls told him to abandon the police station, that guy got 4 years, the same, just about the same as Jacob Chansley got for walking peacefully through the Capitol with his horns and his face painted. And Donald Trump is, an extremist because he wants to pardon people like Jacob Chansley, people who are still in jail for walking peacefully through the Capitol. This, by the way, is the month that the great-grandmother, 71-year-old woman, who walked in the Capitol for 15 minutes and prayed, she must report to prison and serve 10 months. She's the one whose husband asked the judge if he could go with her because she's not healthy and he doesn't think she'll survive. And the judge said, well, she should have thought of that before she walked into the open doors of the Capitol and prayed for 15 minutes. Trump has to stick with that, stick with the guns, stick to his guns and say he will pardon her. But we'll see. I think Trump right now is pretty happy. I think Vance are pretty happy in the RNC, knowing that the Democrat candidate, Kamala Harris, didn't have the guts to pick a Jewish guy, didn't have the guts to defy the pro-Hamas mob, and went with the old, boring socialist instead. Bernie Sanders is happy, but so is Donald Trump. Good luck with that. You know what? This proves she's inept. It proves she's incompetent. This is a terrible pick. This is the first big decision she's had to make since she was anointed, and she blew it. I think. I mean, again, the media is going to lie to you. They're going to gaslight. There will be propaganda about him for 3 months. But the truth is, he is a terrible pick. He's an extremist. He's a left-wing nut. He appeals to nobody in the middle, in the middle of the country or in the middle of the political spectrum. Nobody. You can't have someone like this in the White House, at least not two people like this. We've seen what happens over the last 3.5 years. We can't afford 4 more years of that. But we'll be here. I'm looking forward to watching. Oh, my God, there's Shapiro. Shapiro's appearing right now, praising Walz and saying it's an exceptionally strong ticket. Sure it is. Don't have any Jews on the ticket, though, do you, Shapiro? No, can't have that. Can't have that. They were worried about the mobs in Chicago. That was what they were worried about. If they picked him, they were going to just go wild. The pro-Hamas mobs. They're happy at Harvard today. They're happy at Columbia and MIT. They're happy. No Jews allowed. And Kamala Harris acquiesced. She placated the pro-Hamas crowd. That's the bottom line. All right, that will do it for today. Look at all these comments. I didn't get any good ones here, Ironhead. He looks like,
They're all good.
Paul says, he looks like a fat, sweaty pedo. Yes, he does. He's a big, fat, sweaty, extremist socialist. That's your VP candidate if you're a Democrat. Good luck selling that one. But thanks for listening. Thank you, Ironhead. I'm Jerry Callahan. This is The Callahan Show, and we'll